Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Survivor Talks with Mike. Apparently, last episode was considered as 2 episodes, so officially we are now at episode 8. I've decided that going forward, for the recap segment of this discussion, I will just focus on certain key players and what they did for that episode. If I don't discuss a certain castaway in too much detail, it is only because I didn't feel they got enough content to warrant focusing solely on them for this episode, and it doesn't mean that they're out of contention to win or that they wouldn't still be important for the overall story. So with that said, Roxroy and Lindsay didn't really get that much, so I won't go too into detail about them for this one. And we'll get started off with Tori. She's still viewed as an issue by the other members of the newly minted Kula Kula tribe. She is part of the winning side during the reward challenge and gets to enjoy some peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Uh, she might have bonded with some of the other people there. We didn't see too much of the conversation other than just that they were enjoying the sandwiches. She notices some red paint on Drea's arm later in the episode. She questions her about it, believes that she is hiding something. To me, the first thought I would have is that maybe she was trying to make a fake idol. I can't think of any other reason why a player would have paint on them, and that would be suspicious. Tori wins her second immunity challenge in a row to keep herself safe at Tribal Council. Once they return, everyone's kind of discussing Romeo, Chanel, and Marianne as being the possibilities out there, and keeping the other ones secret from each of them. But she goes ahead and tells Romeo that Roxroy had mentioned his name was out there. Uh, in the end, she ends up voting for Chanel at Tribal Council. Moving on to Mike. He feels like voting out Lydia in the last episode was best for his game going forward. We see him connecting with Omer by learning more about his religion. It's really nice to see this open-minded approach to religion that Mike has. Uh, he's on the winning team for the reward and also gets peanut butter and jelly. He feels that he has a very strong social game and can get people to vote along with him because of that. He's holding a bit of a vendetta against Chanel, so when there's discussions about switching the vote onto Romeo, he will not budge on this and wants to stick with it being on Chanel and convinces the others to stick to Chanel as well. Drea, she says that Romeo's paranoia since the merge has made him a bad choice for her in the alliance, and that's why she brought in Roxroy instead. At the reward, she gives up her spot to Marianne since she says that she doesn't like peanut butter and jelly. Uh, and this ends up being great for her as she ends up finding an advantage. It's another beware advantage, but when she reads it, it says you'll have to beware that others could catch you red-handed. And to me, at first, that was like, that's not even really a beware advantage because any advantage you could be caught grabbing. But then, as it turns out, that when she goes to find it, uh, the the advantage is hidden in a can of red paint, and so she gets her hands uh, are actually red, and she gets caught red-handed by Tori. She sits out of the immunity challenge so that her tribe can receive rice. In the negotiations for it, Jeff was trying to see if he could get them to have 6 people sit out, but they knocked him down to 4. I think they could have got him even lower, honestly. The first time that he really did this was in David vs. Goliath, and he only asked for 1 person to sit out. So I think they could have convinced him to go even lower than 4. At Tribal Council, Drea votes for Chanel. Now for Omer, we see he made a bond with Mike. They're getting closer. He does well in the reward challenge, but falls just short. I thought he did a really good job on the basketball part of that and kind of surprised me. He feels he's in a good position with lots of options since he's in the majority alliance, but because he didn't have his vote in the last one, the people that are outside of that think that he's with them. So he still has a lot of people that he can work with. He sits out of the immunity challenge so that the tribe can get the rice. He tries to push the vote onto Romeo, but he isn't the one really convincing anyone. He just convinces High that that's what they should do, and then High spreads the word. It doesn't end up happening, but I don't see it connecting back to him. And he does end up voting for Romeo at Tribal Council, which keeps him in line with the other outsiders. Now for Jonathan, gets his team out to an early lead in the reward challenge, but they fall behind, only to have him take over again and pull out the win in a magnificent fashion. For Jonathan, I feel like his main storyline has to do with these challenges because he's just such a dominant force with them. He doesn't participate too much back at camp. In the immunity challenge, he falls just short of winning by coming second to Tori. He's thankful for the people that sat out, though, for the rice. High seems to convince him to switch his vote onto Romeo instead of Chanel, but Mike then switches it back. He votes for Chanel in the end at Tribal Council. As for High, he lies to Chanel at the start of the episode about why they switched the vote to Lydia, and she didn't know about that. He tells her that it was just too late before Tribal Council that the vote got switched, and they never got the chance to tell her. During the reward challenge, he's part of the losing team. He's later convinced by Omer to switch the vote onto Romeo, but it's changed back by the time Tribal Council comes around, and we don't even see this conversation with High that switched it back, since he does in the end vote for Chanel after taking some jabs at Romeo at Tribal Council. For Marianne, she didn't get a whole lot in this episode, but the things that she got seem important. Firstly, at the reward challenge, she drew the gray rock, but then Drea switches with her. She sits out of the immunity challenge to get the rice, and she tries to use some emotional manipulation on the tribe. She seems to think it worked well, but I don't know that it really did. Her point was that she wanted to get some of the people that were in better positions than her to sit out. And while her plea does get Omer to switch out, who is in a better position, I don't believe that she thinks that he was in a better position. But we'll see if this plays out at all going forward. As for Romeo, he tries to find out why her and Drea aren't as close now. And we know that it's because he's been acting paranoid. He's part of the losing team in the reward, so he doesn't get the peanut butter and jelly. He's so worried about the vote being on him when it isn't that it almost convinces the others to switch the vote onto him. And I've seen a lot of people online saying that like he's justified in his paranoia, but we heard from the other players, from Drea especially, that he's been acting paranoid right from the beginning. So it's not just that the votes were possibly going to be on him. He was already acting like that. In the end, he votes for High. He's the only vote on High, even though the numbers are clearly not in his favor. I'm not sure if this was an attempt to make a safety in case a shot in the dark is played, or if this was him just trying to take a shot at High before being booted because he probably thought that he was out. Though if he thought he was out, then I would assume that he would play his shot in the dark. Now for Chanel, she tries to clear things up with High about the previous vote. In the challenge, the reward challenge, she's on the winning team. She realizes that she's likely at the bottom and tries to slow play it so that it shows that she isn't a threat. which I think is a great play and I think should have worked. She just didn't realize how much Mike is fully against her. Um, it's tough to see that a player took something so a vote against him so personally at this point in the game or in the series. So Mike manages to get all the votes switched back onto her, and she is voted out. So my thoughts on Chanel are that she seemed like she understood the game well, but just made two key mistakes. First, when she risked her vote and lost it, and then second, when she voted for Mike. I think the vote for Mike was smart, but it was just hard to know that he would take it that personally. My review for this episode was that it was almost a copy and paste of the final 11 in the last season. We also got the return of the knowledge is power advantage, which I think could be good in another season, but when players already know who has the idols, it makes it too overpowered and then just puts a target on the head of whoever used it. Otherwise, the episode itself was perfectly fine. I give episode 8 a score of 6 out of 10. My predictions going forward. Next week, I believe the castaways will be split into two groups for the vote, which is likely the only reason we see an all-men alliance forming, but it won't be long-term. That could throw a wrench in the majority alliance if the tribes are divided in the right ways. It could, however, also just result in two obvious vote outs, like Tori on one side and Romeo on the other, if they end up getting split up like that. Drea will have to start using her advantages soon, but we'll have to get the dominoes set up in just the right way for it to play out for her. I still have Omer and Mike as the leaders for winning, and I'm starting to see Omer as more of a decoy winner or a red herring, with Mike looking more like the winner. That's all I got for this episode. Thank you for watching. If you liked it, hit like. If you want to see more, hit subscribe.